Welcome to the Strong, Single and Human podcast, a real look at single parenting, how to navigate the ups and downs of life with kids on your own while keeping sane. We cover all manner of subjects from domestic violence, dealing with childhood trauma, through to fussy eaters and how to help your kids become resilient. I'm your host, Claire Martin. Welcome. This week's guest was a successful business entrepreneur who grew up with divorced parents whose styles were very different, leading to confusion regarding his adolescent needs for support, security, and safety. And then, a few years ago, he struggled with his daughter as she faced anxiety and depression as a teenager. Both experiences were challenging and heart-wrenching. He wondered what his parents or he could have done differently. In hindsight, after much learning and reflection, he realised a lot could have been done to make these far more positive experiences. As a result, he has made it his mission to help parents like himself find smoother and more productive paths to better communication and connection. Andy Goldstrom is the founder of Parents Journey Coaching. He coaches and helps parents better navigate the challenges of raising children today. Deepening your knowledge about your situation, your parenting style, and what works and doesn't by leveraging your strengths and helping you develop your own solutions. This is the Strong, Single and Human podcast. Hi, Andy Goldstrom. Hi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, good morning to you. And,
Hi, good
thanks for having me.
afternoon to you, I think. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon.
That's
good
right. No, late afternoon, day before.
I know, blimey. I know, it's weird, isn't it, this old
We
world?
span the globe.
I know, it's great. It's great. So look, we're going to talk about a really important subject, really, and that's you coaching parents to help their children, basically. And I've sort of said a little bit in the intro and all the details that I've read before, but tell us a little bit about how you discovered your daughter was anxious and depressed and needed your help.
Yeah, it's a story I'm happy to share because it's cathartic for me, but it also helps parents to make them feel not so alone and that there are solutions out there, including parent coaching, including a lot of other solutions that weren't there. And I discovered this with my daughter, my wife and I before COVID, but for those who had any challenges with their parenting with their kids, it only got exacerbated during COVID, and it's been, nobody's really fully recovered yet, believe it or not. So, but for me, my daughter, who's 23 now, was an effervescent young lady. Never met a stranger, cute as could be, didn't have a care in the world, was always laughing, doing well in school, popular, just what you would hope for in a kid progressing to be a happy and independent kid. As she turned to her teen years, there was a little bit of a cloud that developed over her head, and we couldn't figure out why right away. And long story short, we took her to get tested, and it ended up that she had short-term memory challenges. So information that she would visually see or hear, she wouldn't be able to retain as well as her peers. She tested in the 12th percentile. And so, as you can imagine, she started falling behind her peers socially and academically, and frankly, just began spiraling. And
was this due to puberty, or had she always had that but just been able to deal with it?
I don't know, and her doctors don't know.
Yeah.
Put it this way: the challenges manifested themselves more
Yeah.
Um, and to be honest with you, puberty has to do with a lot of things. It doesn't, but the brain develops 80% within the first 4 years and 90% within the first 5 years. And then
Yeah.
it's malleable until you're like 25 years old. And then it
Yeah.
becomes harder to make change incrementally after you're 25, though it's obviously very possible. So
Mm.
I think it was ingrained in her from an early age. It's just the way her
Wow.
brain developed, and fortunately, she's developed coping skills and has matured a little bit better. But it's always part of her. But we did a bunch of things locally that we tried to do as best we could as parents. We got her a therapist, we got her a tutor. The things in the U.S. called IEPs, that are individualized educational programs to help provide her extra support and time. We connected her with a psychiatrist so she could get medicated properly to help her with her anxiety and
Yeah.
focus. And as she got older, it just got worse and worse and worse to the point where she wasn't safe to herself or to others
Wow.
and wasn't going to school, and we didn't have any other place to turn. So we were in a bad place, and we ended up finding out about an ecosystem called wilderness therapy and residential treatment, which are more prominent in the U.S. And we
Mm.
actually get families from all over the world, including from where you are,
Yeah.
who send their children. And it was very hard because my wife and I were kind of admitting that we couldn't do it ourselves. We had to grieve over the process of the fact that we didn't have a daughter who may not take a path to happiness and independence in the way that we hoped. Our parenting styles were very different. I was a more authoritarian parent, and my wife was a more permissive parent. So we weren't quite
Yeah.
aligned, and there was a little blaming and shaming going on. But it was the right choice, and for our daughter, and more importantly, we invested in a parent coach to help ourselves as parents and as a married couple, and it made a huge difference in our lives. It just, I don't think it would have. I don't. Marriages have been broken up over kid problems, many,
Oh,
yeah. And ours, I don't know if we would have not made it, but we were definitely under a strain.
yeah.
you know,
And like, isn't it kids and money and things like that are like the main, I think kids and money are the main reasons that marriages fall apart. And obviously that's leading to miscommunication, I suppose, on kids and money and various different other things. But yeah, and the wilderness therapy that your daughter, that's actually a therapy where you send your child away.
yeah. I don't use that vernacular. I call it giving them the gift.
Oh, okay. That's cool. But they're not actually with you. They actually go to a
Right.
treatment center.
She was away for
yeah.
She was away for 13 months.
And that also must have caused stress as well, right? Because your daughter was in a situation where she wasn't safe with herself, right? And now you're sending her away to a therapy center and for 13 months. I mean, obviously you saw her during that time. She wasn't 13 months just on her own, like,
No,
off you go.
we saw her a few times, and to stay connected, and we talked with her almost weekly.
Yeah.
And we we tracked her progress. We were vulnerable and showed her what progress we were making. And but it was hard, and it was expensive. I mean, we pulled her out of her
Yeah.
senior year of high school, so she
Wow.
missed prom, she missed graduation, she missed all the things that you hope a kid, would be able to enjoy.
Experiences.
But
Yeah.
but we were fearful that she wouldn't even make it that far.
Well, and this is the thing, right? Then she can enjoy other things in life and not actually put the pressure on her in that last year to.
Right. And when she arrived at her first therapeutic location, she went to two. One is called Wilderness, which is more of a reset button. And then residential treatment is you get some stresses put back onto you so
Oh,
that when you return home or return to school or return to work or whatever, you can handle it.
yeah.
But it was very clear very quickly that she was the stresses that she was under were so demoralizing and difficult and challenging for her that within a couple days she was a different kid.
Wow.
Smiling for the first time, in being outside, feeling safe, feeling understood.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest lesson I think we learned when she came back, is that because as parents we were so concerned with helping her and her safety, that we weren't attuned to what was going on in her head.
Yeah.
She was just, we thought she was trying to defy us, but she was just trying to cope. She was just trying to live day by day and figure things out. And
yeah.
And
like we all are, even now. Like we all are. And wow, and it's just such a stress. And I think as parents, we don't get a manual. Nobody throws us a book and goes, there you go, you've had a child, here you go. This is how it's going to go for the first 7 years. And then this is how it's going to be when they go through puberty. And this is how it's going to work out, from 16 up till 23, 25. And, if you do X, Y, and Z for all, and it's the same, like every child is different as well, right? So you've only got your daughter, haven't you?
I have an older daughter as well.
Oh,
too.
Okay. And so the thing is, what you try with your older daughter might not work with your younger one, and vice versa, right? So,
never does.
Everyone's
Even
an
if the
individual.
kids were twins, they're still two different people.
Yeah. So it's insane. So, okay. So then what drove you then? Was it your experience of the parent coaching and everything like that? Because what drove you to founder Parent Journey Coaching? Was it that you'd had such a great experience with your parent coach?
Yeah. So Parents Journey Coaching is a firm that I founded. I was a business entrepreneur and I was successful running and growing my own businesses. A lot of it had to do with really leveraging people and their skills and developing people to help the businesses scale. So that was kind of my superpower. It wasn't that I was the smartest or the best looking or the best sales guy or anything like that. It was just that I learned how to get the best out of people. And part of my focus and my agreement with my wife was she would stay at home at a certain point. She was a professional. She had a law degree. But we decided that my career was taking off, that she would stay home with the kids, and if I needed to fly across, somewhere or work all night, then that was our agreement. And basically, what happened to our younger daughter was kind of a rude awakening about how commitments to work and not a lot being aligned with your wife and not being attuned takes its toll. And you make choices in life and they have consequences. And so when we were addressing the scenario with our younger daughter, we were in pretty bad shape. I mean, we were under a lot of stress. There was a lot of financial pressure relating to the decisions we were making. And we felt very lonely and stigmatized by the whole thing. And what kind of made me want to create Parents Journey Coaching was a recognition that when people realized what we were going through, we didn't promote it, but we didn't hide it.
Yeah.
The phone started ringing. There were these parents who said, I'm really struggling too. What did you do? Can we talk to you? or I have a friend of a friend or know somebody who's really struggling. And we took those calls and people were so grateful. And it was just that there was another person with an ear who understood them. And so I said, you know what, there's a real need here. And so I got certified by two national organizations. I had to take 2-year-long courses that required classroom work and testing and peer coaching and supervised coaching, and then ongoing individualized coaching and ongoing certification. And so what it did was it leveraged my business acumen and made it more of a how do you facilitate at the parent level.
Yeah.
And so for several years now, I'm in my 6th year. I've been working with single parents, married parents, co-parent situations. And I get results because I've always kind of been a coach, and I have I have strength in how I deliver my work and how I talk to people and hold them accountable, but I have an empathetic heart and an empathetic understanding of the way to communicate. So that balance kind of is able to drive good results. And I'm proud of the impact that I'm able to have, but the credit really belongs to the parents who recognize that they need the help and they need to make some changes. And some people call me because they're in crisis. That's probably a good number of folks.
Yeah.
Some see some things on the horizon and they want to be prepared and they call me. And then there's some scenarios where lawyers who were managing their clients through a divorce will actually make a recommendation to a judge that one or both of the parents need to work with me.
Yeah.
And it becomes a requirement. And the parents come on typically and they say, you know what, I'm going through a tough time right now. And my ex is, it's horrible. And my kids, and I wouldn't ordinarily come and meet with you, but it's required by the court. And that's what they say. And then a couple of weeks later, they're like, I'm learning a lot here.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're working together. It wasn't something I expected. And so that's gratifying.
Yeah, and this is the thing, right? Nobody likes to go out. I mean, we all have our friends, and whether you're a couple, single mum, or whatever. And I don't know if single mums talk a little bit more about it. Maybe because we're mums and we're women, so women tend to talk a bit more about it. But you don't want to, as a parent, state that your child's having a hard time of it, or that there are issues, or that you can't parent, or that you're doing things and that it's failing, right? And it's having effect on your child. So it is a lonely place to be, isn't it? Because when it's saying you can't cope, you're failing, which is not the case. I mean, we're all human beings and we're extremely complex creatures. And sometimes we can't even manage ourselves, right? Let's face it. So, but it's a lonely place. But I suppose reaching out to somebody like you, at least it's like you're on their team, as it were. You're external from the family, but you're on their team.
Right. So when I work with those folks that are court assigned, part of the reason is they've gotten beat up through the court system. Whether they're right or wrong is irrelevant, but they need somebody who will support them for their growth to do the right thing, frankly, on behalf of the kids. So there's no doubt it is stigmatized. And good parenting, I mean, there are cultural issues and geographic issues and a lot of issues, but parenting is parenting. And I've been fortunate. I have, most of my clients are in the US, but I've had clients from every continent, but Antarctica. So they could be halfway around the world like you are, and they still have a
Yeah.
parenting need, and they'll find me and they'll call me up, and in the US, at least the numbers aren't quite as bad in other parts of the world, but in the US, dual parent households only make up 55% of the parenting population. So 45% are co-parenting situations or single parenting situations, and 23% are single parenting situations. So almost 1 in 4 households with kids has a single parent, be it a mom or a dad.
I think it's 1 in 6 over here, but yeah.
Yeah. And you know that, I don't know if it's harder on moms or harder on dads. I think it's hard for both. And
depends on the situation, doesn't it? It depends on the situation, if you've got, I mean, I know some dads who have their children 100% of the time, right? And I'll probably get shot by this, but I think sometimes they've have a harder job, right? Because, the work environment, I'm a single mom, right? The work environment goes, okay, you're a single mom. You're the major carer, and therefore if your child's ill, you need to go home, and if there's issues at school. And so it is, in a way, socially acceptable that I have to go home from work. I can't maybe be as flexible, but I've got men in exactly the same position, right? 100% of the care of their children, and they need to leave work to pick them up from daycare. They need to leave work to sort out school issues and stuff like that. And the work environment doesn't look at them in the same way. And it's awful, especially in this day and age.
Right. Well, I think the things that people are facing nowadays are relating to, and it's not getting any better. It's social media, it's access to drugs and alcohol, it's safety, and it's and it's working around the clock. And a big thing relating to social media just has to do with the fact that it's 24/7.
It is.
And if you ever got bullied in school or had a hard time in school,
that was in school, wasn't it?
And that was it. Now you're, there's so much comparison, and whether it's a guy or a male or a female, a lot of it has to do with trust and communication, and with your ex-spouse, or if you never had a formal partnership. There's a way to speak to your ex-partner or partner, and there's certainly a way to speak to your kids and put them in a position where they're going to trust you more, not just because you're the parent, but because they are smarter than you think they are. And what people look for is trust is the willingness to make yourself vulnerable to another when you're uncertain how they may act.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah. So
that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah. So if a child thinks they're going to be harmed or not supported or not understood, and they kind of look at how much what my parents doing or not doing, paying attention to me, supporting me, may hurt me, then I might rebel, or I might, or if I'm in school and my peers make me not trust them, maybe I'll carry that home. And you can see that in other behaviors that the parents need to pick up on. And so parents need to, you have to gain trust by helping them reduce their level of uncertainty or vulnerability. And
how do we do that, though? Is that what you teach? When parents come to you, is that what you're trying to get those parents to understand and deal with, is building trust with their child and putting themselves in their child's shoes, as it were? Is that what you're trying to do?
Well, it's one aspect. I mean, there are a lot of different ways depending upon, Some parents I work with have a very trusting relationship with their kid. They're just going through a hard time with their ex or a change in job, or
Yeah.
the kid's having trouble and they have a good trusting relationship, but the parent doesn't know how to deal with it, you know?
Yeah.
And so I actually have a framework that I've developed that's called a 4A framework, and the A's are assess, address, act, and adjust. And so the reason for the first part, assessment, is everybody's different. We talked about it, whether they're twins, whether it's single parent, male, female. Really have to understand their goals, what's worked for them and hasn't worked for them, what their childhood and relationships are like, what trauma they've endured, because it kind of sets the foundation for what approaches can and can't work.
Yeah.
Then we put a plan in place that's addressing. And there are a number of different plans, including some of these relating to communication and trust. Most of it comes down to communication and having more proactive communication. And then acting is allowing them, after we've kind of role played and discussed the approaches, for them to, what I call, bump into the world and actually try it out. And then the adjustment is, how do you tweak it so that it really works and really sticks? Because sometimes the first time it doesn't work exactly as you'd hope for whatever reason. Something else came up, the child reacted differently, the parent didn't have confidence in the way they executed, all the rest. And so, but trust is, again, it's all about communication. A lot of parents impose their view of parenting based upon the way they were brought up 30, 40 years ago, 20, 30, 40 years ago, and they try and impose it on their kids. Well, when I grew up, I always had to have a crew cut. My dad, I always had to have my hair nice and kempt, and it was because it was going to make me a better person and more successful and looked at better. And my kid wants to express himself a little bit more, and is deciding he wants his hair to be a little bit less organized or kempt. And the parent makes a big deal about it. And my goal is to not fight them on it. It's to say, is this in the best interest of the kid? You imposing your belief system from 30 years ago on him. Is it in the best interest of the kid? And if you still want to deal with it that way, then let's figure out how to make it work.
Even your hopes and dreams.
And you can only pick so many battles, right?
I agree, Andy. Even your hopes and dreams, though. My, God love him, my child plays soccer and I'm English, right? So I'm a very happy mum because I'm in Australia and it's called soccer here. It's called soccer in the States where you are, but it's called football where I come from. So it's a bit, everyone takes a mickey at me at home. But my child wants to be a goalie. He wants to be a goal. He loves being in goal. And Mummy is like, why do you want to be in goal? You want to be up there scoring goals. You want to be out on the pitch, running around, right? But that's my hope and dream, that he's out there scoring goals and doing all he's doing, right? But he wants to be a goalie. So at one point I had to sit there and go, no, that's what he wants, is to be a goalie. I want him to be out on the pitch running around. So I went, no, step back a minute. Let him be what he wants to be. And he's having a whale of a time. And
that's a great example.
Do or die, right? A goalie is do or die, right? You can be the hero of the match and save all those goals, or you can be the villain of the match and let them in, right? So I'm not sure I want all of that pressure on him, but hey ho, that's where he wants to be.
I had one client once who was a very good musician.
Yeah.
Never made it big, but a good musician and loved music.
Wow.
And from the day his child was born, that's what that kid was going to do. And the kid complied. And then literally I got the call not because the kid was struggling in school or being defiant or into drugs, or he was a little too young for that still. He was still a young kid. But the reason I got the call was the parents said, my child really isn't into music and it's killing me. What can I do to get him to be a musician and an award-winning musician? Because and I said, are you doing this because you're trying to
live your life,
live
through your
vicariously
child.
through him because you didn't succeed? Or is this what he wants to do? Why don't you ask him and then let him do what he wants? That was a very hard thing for him to swallow. Right?
Yeah. I mean, a goalie or midfield striker or whatever, I'm not too worried about. And he's 8, so hey ho. But
this kid was about the same age.
Yeah. And I mean, my son's wants a drum kit, right? So we won't even go there because mummy's definitely put her foot down about that. And I've just said, well, we'll sort it out maybe at a later date. But there's only so many things you could do. But no, you can't live it. Like at the end of the day, they're not your possession to manipulate and do what you want them to do. They're their own people, right? You don't own your child. You've had your child, and they are a what's the word I'm looking for? My brain's not working this morning. They're a pleasure. They're an extension of you, but they're not you, right? So that's
no, you couldn't have said it any better. I mean, it's really simple. I think parents are trying to do their best. They think they're helping their kid, but too often they're stubbing their toe rather than helping their kid, not letting them face adversity by helping them and doing everything for them, not listening to them or understanding them, and not, and not understanding the complexities of what they're facing compared to what we faced as kids. And when I talk about trust, I talk about, being benevolent, which is really about helping, showing that you're trying to help your kid without any expectations of them.
Yeah.
So
and that's hard.
It is. It's bringing them to soccer practice for them to just enjoy themselves. They don't have to score a goal. They don't have to thank you. They don't have to do anything. They just have to do what they want to do. Helping them without expectations.
And I don't know about
I'm helping you with your homework, so you have to clean your room. There's no tie together. And then integrity.
Yeah.
Your kids want to know that they can count on you, that if you say you're going to do something, good or bad, if you're going to punish them and you proactively talk about that there's a consequence, that you follow through on it, as well as if you say you're going to be there for them, you're going to be there for them.
Yeah.
And then you have to have the ability. So it's, you have to have the competence to do what you say you're going to do. And a lot of the way to execute some of this is really to ask, listen, and respond.
Yeah.
And the reason is because we don't know, even though there are kids, where their head's at.
So how do you ask?
And what good looks like to them.
This is the thing. Yeah, I completely agree, because what good looks like to them could be completely different. And I have to say, I would love my child to go to uni and get a degree and do whatever he wants to do, right? But also, if he doesn't want to go, then like some people say, my kid will do it, because then they'll have a qualification and then they'll, and then they can do whatever they want afterwards, right? But I go, but then maybe they've wasted 3 years of doing something that they could have been building other things, I don't know. But they could be 3 years of very unhappy at university. I don't know. I mean, I never went, so I can't really comment.
Yeah.
But
I think what you have to do is you have to have those conversations that are age appropriate.
Yeah.
So you got to put it in age appropriate terms. But the idea is at an early age, you ask your kid what matters most to you, and what does good look like to you. And if I were going to help you, what would that look like? How could I act in your best interests? And how would that be helpful?
I suppose, because then they can come back and say, well, you can't do anything. Oh, it's down to me, or whatever. Or they could come up with suggestions you haven't even thought of as a parent.
That's right. And the worst thing that could happen is you could get not much of a response.
Yeah.
And if you don't get much of a response, that probably means that they don't trust you, and they're not willing to open up, right? So you have to bang away at it so that they understand that you have the integrity and you're only looking out for them. And it could be
how do you do that though, Andy? How do you bang away at it, as you said? Like, how do you build that trust?
Well, you're patient. And
by letting them
you have to be patient, and then you have to demonstrate to your child that you are benevolent and that you have integrity and that you have ability, and then and that you're going to let them be their own people. Which
is going to be hard for you as a parent, isn't it?
The earlier you start and the more trust you develop earlier. The problem is a lot of parents who are in crisis don't have that, and they have to recover. Yeah. And when you have to recover, it's harder because you're having to work your way up. And that's when you need to understand the story of those who feel violated or untrusted. What's that gap? And then you have to find out, what are they telling themselves about what happened, what role you played in it, what level of culpability they place on you, and how they were harmed. And then you can start addressing it. Wow. And the same thing occurs, I talked about benevolence, integrity, and ability. So with integrity, you can ask the same questions. It's walking the walk, following through on what we say we're going to do. And so you can ask your child, I try and make promises and follow through on them. I know I don't do all of them. What promises do you think I've made, and which ones have I followed through on? And what do you expect of me? And, how can I do better?
And it's being vulnerable yourself.
Conversations. That makes a difference.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. Like, you're obviously, you're putting it out there. And I know, like I've said to my son, and I know he's only 8, but I've said to my son, Mummy's not perfect, right? Mummy's going to make mistakes. So you and I work together and see how we can come up with a resolution to this situation, right? Because I'm not going to have all the answers, and he needs to be able to find his answers. So it's about us working together to come to a resolution that's causing him an issue as such.
Yep. And then a lot, 100%. If you help your son or your daughter, depending upon who's listening, explore, I like the word explore with you, what the options are, and then they have the ability to make a choice, then they have more buy-in, and they can figure out how to solve things for themselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can facilitate more and make suggestions and ask permission, but most parents like to tell their kids what to do, and then they wonder why their kids are resistant, because they feel like they're being bossed around and lectured as opposed to empowered. And
it's difficult though, isn't it? Because we've been there, seen it, got the T-shirt, made the video, had the blooming radio station blaring it all out and everything like that, right? So we've done everything, right? Got the movie contract, whatever. Made those mistakes. However, it's important for us to let our kids go out there and experience that mistake safely. Let's call it safely. We don't want to go anywhere unsafe, but to experience their own mistakes, right? Because their experience of what we think their mistake is that they're going to make is different to our experience. Definitely different to mine, because I'm 52, right? So there was no internet, there was no social media, there was no anything else, right? But it's important for them to go, but for us to be there, like you said, be supportive and be there when they need us to be there to support them.
Right. But the question then is, how are you there to support them? Are you rescuing them? Are you telling them what to do? Or did they know that you'll be there without judgment to help them when they say they need help? That's what kids want.
Yeah.
Kids want a sense of understanding and control. And understanding is just being curious and asking them questions without judgment, and giving them a sense of control doesn't mean they get to make the choices. It just means you get to explore the choices, and they can suggest what the right choice is for them. And then you can agree with it or say, you know what, that isn't going to work. And here's why, let's explore something else. You're still the parent, right? And so
yes,
being benevolent isn't necessarily about being nice. You can give critical feedback. It depends on how it's delivered and if you have their best interests at heart.
And what about if they don't take your critical feedback? You've just got to sit back and take a deep breath. And
it's how it's delivered. And then most parents are very reactive. They see a violation in their own mind, and then they penalize the kid. And the kid says, what's going through the kid's mind more often than not is, I didn't know that was wrong, or
well, I think that's more colorful language than that, but that's okay.
Or right. I didn't know that was wrong, or I didn't know that the consequence was going to be as steep.
Yeah.
And then two things happen. One is, the child gets defensive and causes problems, and the behavior goes up. And then either the parent holds the kid accountable or doesn't. Yeah. And if he does, and if they do, it feels punitive. And if they don't, it feels confusing. And so a lot of what I talk about is work with your child to set some boundaries and rules that are important. Pick your fights, but don't just say, here are the rules in our house. Say, here are the values in our house. We want to be an honest family, people who do our homework and do our jobs, keep the house clean. What are the things that we think are important in this house? Yeah. And then you kind of agree on things like, if you can agree in advance on use of social media and what's reasonable, and then what's a reasonable consequence if they don't adhere, then they're making a choice when they violate it. And so it's not a surprise to them. And then you just have to follow through with it. And most parents don't do that. Most parents who call me up, single parents, they're so busy. They call me up. They're like, I don't have time for this. I'm working. I'm trying to take care of myself and taking care of my kids. I'm like, I'm there. I understand. Yeah. But if you are a reactive parent, it's taking you twice as much effort on the back end than it would have on the front end.
Yeah, so I agree.
Make the time.
I agree. I mean, my son moans and whinges about sitting down for dinner. So in the school holidays, we're a bit laxed about where we have dinner. But in the school term, we sit down every night and we have dinner together. There's only two of us. It's probably a bit boring for him because he's got to talk to his mum. But that's what we do, right? We sit down and we might talk to my mum and dad in the UK via FaceTime or whatever. But we sit down and have a conversation as a family and communicate and talk about my day and his day, and no devices, and try and cover off some of the things that you've just said about values and about like what's a good thing and a bad thing and like stuff that's happened. Sometimes he's now turning around and saying to me, he's had a bad day. Oh, Mum, I've had a terrible day today. And I'm like, okay, tell me about it. What was terrible about it, or what made it terrible? And I'm trying to use open questions, because that's the key, right? Open questions, so he can actually come back to me instead of him going, oh, nothing, or yep, or
sounds like you're doing a good job with that.
Well, I don't know about that, but some days it feels like it's hell on earth. But and some days I get grunts. But you just got to persevere, haven't you? You just got to keep going. So yeah, no, it's awesome. So look, how do people get in contact with you if they've been sitting listening to us chatting on here, Andy, and they think that they need a parent coach or need your help?
Yeah. Well, a couple things to know. One is parent coaching is about forward progress and acting, which from my business background and my parenting background is really what I'm about. It's about getting
Yeah.
results and making those adjustments. I'm not a therapist. A
No.
therapist is somebody who kind of diagnoses, maybe, and will talk about healing, but I'm not going to tell you your kid has ADHD or that you as a parent have this condition or that. That's not my job. My job is to get the best of what you got. And so I got into this business to coach and to help people. If I strictly wanted to, be a top money earner at this point in my life, I wouldn't be doing this.
No.
But when you get to a certain point and certain things happen in your life, there's you find your purpose, and so I'm willing to have a conversation with anybody to just be an ear or talk to them, regardless of whether I can help them with my parent coaching services, because I have a lot of resources and understanding, and I've probably been there or helped parents who have been in their circumstances. Or if somebody really wants to find out about my parent coaching, they can, we can talk about that too and find that out. And the best thing to do is to go to my website, which is parentsjourneycoaching.net. Parentsjourneycoaching.net. You can find out about my services. If you want to have a discovery call or a discussion, you can schedule a call. The calendar pops right up.
Yeah.
And I have a Facebook page under Parents Journey Coaching, and Instagram and YouTube and all those other things too. So
all the usuals.
People can follow me on different things, and when I post, it's mostly about providing, little suggestions or hints that people can incorporate into their day, or I'll respond to people just to try and be a good, in different groups, just to try and provide some inspiration in the community.
Yeah. And just helping people. That's what you're about, isn't it? It's helping parents, make life easier for them and their kids.
Yeah. I mean, just think about it as, my source of gratification in prior years was, did I get that big new source of business? Did I win that account? Did I make a big bonus? Did my boss think I did well? That was my measure. All right. Now I'll get something that, a parent says to me, they had a situation where their son was living on the street. There was no communication. He couldn't live at home, and she was fearful for his life. And then 3 months later, he's living at home. They're communicating well, and he has a job.
Fantastic.
Just because of the change in the parent, the way you can't control your child, you can control yourself and the way you interact with your child.
Yeah.
And so when stuff happens like that, it's just, that certainly is impactful. And
I think I agree with you, right? It's key, right? You can't change the person you're co-parenting with. You can't change your child and how they're thinking. They are their own person. And I think so many times with our kids, we think we can influence our kids, especially when they're younger, we can. I think, when they're before 5, I think we can influence where they are, and we teach them, don't touch that, that's hot, and we influence what they do. But then after, when they start school and things, that's a whole different kettle of fish. And then they start getting older and start to want to feel their feet in the world. We can hope that we've laid a foundation and the values and the behaviors are there, but they're their own person. They make their own choices. And so the only thing that we can do is influence and change how we communicate to them. And it's hard. They're our babies, right? At the end of the day, especially as a mom, they're our babies, and our babies are growing up. That's really hard to deal with.
It's definitely an art more than a science. You talked about the manual that does not exist. And so it's, and a lot of what I do too is just making sure that parents are taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
Because so much of their life is centered around their kids and their work. And then they don't they're not their best version of themselves to their kids, much less to themselves. And so I spend time on that with parents too, to make sure that they're putting something in the calendar based upon what they enjoy to do.
Well, and I think, like, I've always likened it to grieving, right? When your child starts growing up and pulling away from you, it's almost like you're grieving the younger child, the toddler, the whatever, because your child is now doesn't need you.
Right.
So you're grieving.
It goes up and down, you know. I don't want to, a mom might say, I don't want to stop nursing. And it's a struggle to determine when to stop nursing. And then you hit the terrible twos and they say, oh, these twos are terrible. And then they're like, I don't want my kid to, my kid's is so cute in preschool or whatever young school they go to. And then I don't want them to get to the next stage. Right. And then they get to that next stage and then you feel your own age, as they start to get older. And so.
Yeah. No, I know. Look, Andy, thank you for coming on the podcast and talking about all of this, because I think, like, parent coaching just has such an important role in this world because, like I said, there is no manual, right? And it can be a very lonely place, especially as a single parent, but I don't think it really matters as a single parent or whether you're in a couple. Sometimes I think there's more complexity being coupled, because you're then dealing with another parent as well as your parenting style and then the child, whereas there's only me, right? So there's only me dealing with my child. But thank you for coming on board and chatting with us. I think it's such an important job that you do with parents out there, because it just helps our kids out in the world, a complex, scarier world than I was around when I was around. But look, I've got one final question for you. What was a piece of advice that you were given that you still use today? Because this fascinates me with some of the answers people come up with.
From a parent coach?
Parent coach or from anything. I'm just fascinated with this piece of advice that people are throwing out to the world. I might make a book on it one day.
I think it all has to do with about attunement. It's figure out how to connect with your kid so that they trust you, and that you're letting them grow up and find their way in this world.
Yeah.
And let them create their path as opposed to you creating it for them.
Yeah.
And so if those things happen, and you start younger with them, you will be doing them a great service.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yourself. And you said, I don't want to correct you, but you said a moment ago, you're really helping kids. I'm not really helping kids. I'm helping parents.
Well, you are.
And based upon what the parents do, it's helping their kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So sort of like in a roundabout way, you're helping kids. But yeah, no, you are helping parents. But at the end result is helping their kids. And this, these kids.
And if I thought my wife and I were more attuned to our daughter, would she have not had short-term memory issues? Would we not have had to give her the gift of these advanced therapies? We still probably would have ended there, right?
Yeah.
But our connection with her, because she was a severe case, but our connection to her and our ability to understand her and manage through it and work with her through it would have been so much easier for both parties. And so that was the biggest lesson I certainly learned. And just one comment is, when we went and visited her for the first time, they did a little kind of skit for us, and it's called Statues. And basically, my daughter was trying to create a scene, and she used other kids and other people to represent her family. And we'd have to be like a statue. So she set some guy up, like a boy or a dad, another dad up to be me, and one to be my older daughter and one to be my wife. And then she was herself. And this was a month after she had gone away. So 1 month out of 13 months.
Wow.
And my daughter was kind of off in the distance because she was away at college and not directly as involved in the day-to-day, given who she was and what her role was. So
Yeah.
we'll push her to the side for the moment. I was off in the distance too on a different side.
Wow.
And I was standing there with my cell phone on my ear, taking a phone call, doing business work. So I wasn't involved. She didn't see me as directly involved. And then she had my wife hovering over her like this.
Wow.
And my daughter was underneath her cowering. And so it was shocking and a great learning experience because I thought I was more engaged and that she understood that I was more engaged and that I was doing more for her than I was and that I was more understanding of her than I was. And I clearly wasn't in her head.
No.
And then my wife, she was like, I was just trying to protect my kid. And obviously she did not feel that way. She felt like she couldn't breathe. Right.
Yeah.
And so that whole attunement thing is,
so in a way, it's so important to check in with your child.
Well, it's in the ways that we talked about.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. In a
not
non-aggressive,
just how's it going, but actually peeling that layer and going deep and building trust.
Well, it is like peeling an onion, I suppose. And it might be that the first time you do it, you only get that brown layer off at the top. And then every time you not push is the wrong word, but inquire and try and be, trying to think of the right word to describe how to be. Present. Just be present. That's right.
Yeah.
You'll start to bore down. That's an aggressive way of doing it, but bore down into their souls and find out what they're thinking. But bore down and understand them and who they are. And it's hard, especially when they're teenagers, because I don't think they understand who they are. They're trying to find it out. So yeah, I don't know. Mine's only 8 and sometimes I don't understand him. So the teenage years are going to be fun for me. But look, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on board and talking to everyone. If people want to talk to you, please go on the website, speak to Andy. He's there. He's there for you. If he doesn't know or he can't deal with it, he can point you in the right direction, is basically what you're saying, Andy, isn't it?
I will do my best. And if it's something I don't know, I'm not going to try and make it up. It's too important.
No, exactly. So look, thank you. And I wish you the best.
Thank you, Claire. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you would like to hear more, please hit subscribe wherever you like to hear podcasts. If you would like to support us further, share this episode with your friends and family. And finally, drop us a review on iTunes, as I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and ideas. It all helps me to understand and produce awesome content you want to hear just like this. If you want to check out our past episodes, write to us, appear on the podcast, or for links, resources, and show notes, go to our website, www.strongsingleandhuman.com. We are also on all the usual social media platforms, Insta, Facey, and Twitter. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I hope to see you back here again soon. Be kind to yourself, and remember, no one is perfect. We're all just putting one foot in front of the other and doing our best. I'm Claire Martin, and you've been listening to the Strong, Single and Human podcast.